The ship moved through the dark space like a small fish in a big ocean. It was called the Horizon's Edge, and it carried 4 people who had no idea their lives were about to change forever. Captain Park Woo-jin sat in his chair and watched the stars pass by. He was a quiet man with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too much war. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations. They had been traveling for 3 weeks, mapping new sectors of space for the United Earth Defense Corps. "Captain," said Da from her engineering station. She was young, only 26, with quick hands and a quicker mind. "I am picking up a signal. It is a distress call." Woo-jin turned his chair. "From where?" "A planet, no name on our maps, about 2 hours away." Lee looked up from her medical station. She was the ship's doctor, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands. "What species sent the signal?" Da shook her head. "Unknown. The signal does not match anything in our database." From the corner of the bridge, Sergeant Ho stood up. He was a soldier, built like a wall, with scars on his hands from battles he never talked about. "Could be a trap," he said. His voice was deep and calm. Woo-jin nodded slowly. "It could be, but it could also be someone who needs help." He was quiet for a moment, then he made his decision. "Set a course. We will investigate, but everyone stays armed and ready." The planet was gray and cold. Mountains rose like broken teeth from the ground, and strange plants grew in twisted shapes. The air was thin but breathable. The crew landed their shuttle near the source of the signal. What they found was death. The research outpost was destroyed. Buildings were torn open like paper. Strange equipment lay broken on the ground. And there were bodies, not human bodies. These creatures were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces were frozen in expressions of fear. "What happened here?" whispered. She knelt beside one of the bodies. "These wounds, something with claws did this, something big." Ho held his rifle ready. His eyes moved across the ruins, watching every shadow. "We should leave, now." But before anyone could move, they heard it. A sound like rocks grinding together, then another, and another, coming from all directions. The creatures came from the ground. They burst through the soil like nightmares made real. They were massive, twice the size of a man, with black armor-like skin and claws as long as swords. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light. "Run!" Woo-jin shouted. They ran, but the creatures were fast, too fast. Ho turned and fired. His rifle lit up the gray air with bright flashes. One creature fell, then another, but more kept coming. "Get to the shuttle," he yelled. "I will hold them." No grabbed his arm. "We stay together." A creature lunged at them. Ho pushed aside and met it head-on. His rifle cracked against its skull. The creature stumbled, but another came from the side. Ho did not see it until it was too late. The claw hit him like a truck. It tore through his armor, through his skin, through muscle and bone. He felt cold air touch places inside his body that should never feel air. He looked down and saw his own ribs. He saw blood pouring out of him like water from a broken pipe. He should have died. Any normal thinking said he should have fallen right there and never gotten up again. But Ho was not thinking about dying. He was thinking about his crew. He raised his rifle with one arm and fired into the creature's face. It screamed and fell back. Then he turned and kept moving toward the shuttle. Saw him and her face went white. "Ho, oh no, no, no." "Keep moving," he said. His voice was weak but steady. "Do not stop for me." De reached the shuttle first. She threw herself at the controls and started the engines. Woo-jin grabbed Ho's arm and helped him up the ramp. Was right behind them, already pulling out her medical kit. The creatures slammed against the shuttle as it lifted off. Their claws scraped the metal, but they could not hold on. The shuttle rose into the sky and left them behind. Inside worked on Ho with desperate speed. Her hands were covered in his blood. She could see organs that should be hidden. She could see damage that should have killed him 10 times over. "This is impossible," she said. You should not be alive, your heart should have stopped. Ho looked at her with eyes that were somehow still clear. Just fix what you can. I am not ready to die yet. De called from the front. We have a problem. The engines are damaged. Something hit us during takeoff. We can fly, but we cannot jump to faster than light speed. Wu Jin closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. Send a distress signal. Use all frequencies. Someone will hear us. Captain, De said slowly, there are ships already coming. They appeared on my scanner just now. Earth ships? No, unknown design. They are big, very big. Through the shuttle window, they could see them now. 3 massive warships, shaped like blades, painted in colors of purple and gold. They moved with terrible grace, surrounding the small shuttle like wolves around a wounded deer. Wu Jin stood and looked at them. His face was calm, but his hands were tight fists at his sides. It seems we are about to make new friends, he said quietly. On the floor of the shuttle, Ho lay in a pool of his own blood. Had stopped the worst of the bleeding, but the wound was still open, still terrible. Any doctor from any known species would have said he had minutes to live at most. But Ho's heart kept beating, his lungs kept breathing, his eyes stayed open and aware. He did not know it yet, but that simple fact, that impossible refusal to die, was about to change everything. The beings in those warships had conquered 100 worlds. They thought they knew everything about life and death. They had never met a human before. And when they finally saw what a human could survive, when they saw Ho stand up on his own legs with his organs still visible through his torn flesh, they would learn something that would shake their entire empire to its core. Humans did not know when to die, and that made them the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. The shuttle drifted in space, surrounded by alien warships. Inside, 4 humans waited for whatever came next. They were scared, they were wounded, they were far from home. But they were alive, and they planned to stay that way. The alien warship swallowed the small shuttle like a whale swallowing a tiny fish. Metal clamps grabbed the hull and pulled it inside a landing bay so large that 100 shuttles could have fit inside. The engines went quiet. The lights flickered, and then there was only silence. Wu Jin stood at the shuttle door, his hand on his pistol. Behind him, De helped support Ho. The sergeant was still standing, though no one understood how. His wound was wrapped in bloody bandages, but everyone could see the damage was too great. He should have been dead hours ago. Whatever happens, Wu Jin said quietly, we stay together. We do not fight unless we must. Understand? They all nodded. The shuttle door opened with a hiss. Bright light flooded in, making them shield their eyes. When their vision cleared, they saw them. The aliens were tall, almost 3 meters high. Their skin was pale purple, smooth like polished stone. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that were almost human but not quite. Their eyes were larger, completely black, like pools of dark water. They wore armor of gold and white, and they carried weapons that hummed with strange energy. There were at least 50 of them, all pointing their weapons at the shuttle. One alien stepped forward. He was larger than the others, with marks on his armor that showed high rank. His black eyes studied the humans with a look of cold curiosity. I am commander of the Empire, he said. His voice was deep and smooth. The translator in Wu Jin's ear turned the alien words into English. You are in our space. You will come with us. Wu Jin raised his hand slowly. We mean no harm. We are explorers. Our ship was damaged. We were only trying to survive. Did not seem to care about his words. His eyes moved past Wu Jin, past Dan, and stopped on Ho. The commander's expression changed. For just a moment, something like confusion crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by a hard stare. That one said, pointing at Ho, what is wrong with him? He is wounded, said quickly. He needs medical care, please, if you have doctors. Wounded, stepped closer. His soldiers moved with him, keeping their weapons ready. The commander stopped just 2 meters from Ho and looked at the bandages, at the blood that still dripped onto the floor. Slowly, without asking permission, reached out and pulled the bandage aside. What he saw made him step back. His black eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The wound was still there, open and terrible. Ribs were visible. Damaged organs could be seen moving with each breath Ho took. It was the kind of wound that should have killed anyone instantly. But Ho was still standing, still breathing, still looking at with eyes that held no fear. "This is impossible," whispered. His voice shook slightly. "You should be dead. Your body should have stopped." Ho managed a small, painful smile. "Sorry to disappoint you." Stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to his soldiers and spoke in rapid words the translator could not catch. Several soldiers lowered their weapons. Others brought forward a floating platform, like a stretcher that hung in the air. "Put him on this," ordered. "Carefully. The Queen will want to see him. She will want to see all of them." The journey through the alien ship took a long time. The humans were led through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Everything was clean and beautiful, made of smooth purple metal and white light. Other aliens stopped to stare as they passed. Word was spreading fast. Stayed close to Ho's floating stretcher. She watched his vital signs on her small medical device. His heart rate was weak but steady. His blood pressure was dangerously low. By every medical rule she knew, he should have died long ago. "How are you still alive?" she whispered to him. Ho's eyes were closed, but he answered, "Stubborn, I guess." The soldiers took them to a transport ship inside the warship, then flew them down to a planet below. It was a beautiful world of purple forests and silver oceans. Cities of white towers rose toward the sky. This was the home of the Empire, and it was clear they had been ruling the stars for a very long time. The throne room was the largest indoor space the humans had ever seen. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow. Pillars of crystal held up the roof, each one carved with images of history. At the far end, on a throne made of something that looked like frozen light, sat the Queen. Queen was ancient. The humans could feel it just by looking at her. She had ruled for over 300 years, and every one of those years showed in her eyes. They were not just black like the others. They held depth, wisdom, and a cold intelligence that made Wu Jin's skin crawl. She was beautiful in a way that was not human. Her skin was darker purple than the others, almost blue. Her robes flowed around her like water made solid. When she spoke, her voice filled the entire room. "Bring them closer." The soldiers pushed the humans forward until they stood at the base of the throne. Stood nearby, his expression troubled. Looked at each human in turn. Her eyes paused on Wu Jin, nodding his calm. On De, seeing her fear. On reading her determination. Then she looked at Ho. The stretcher floated forward until Ho was directly before the throne. 2 soldiers helped him stand. He swayed but did not fall. Tried to go to him, but soldiers held her back. Queen rose from her throne. She walked down the steps with the grace of flowing water. She stopped in front of Ho, so close that she could have touched him. Her hand moved to his bandages. Gently, she pulled them aside. The throne room went silent. Every in the room stared. Some turned away. Others made sounds of distress. Even, who had already seen the wound, looked sick. Stared at the wound for a long, long time. Her face showed nothing, but her hands trembled slightly. "This wound," she said finally, "is fatal. Your internal organs are visible. Your blood loss is critical. You should not be standing. You should not be breathing. You should not be alive." Ho looked at her with steady eyes. "We do not die easy." Was quiet for a moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized that everything they believed was wrong. She laughed for a long time, and when she finally stopped, her eyes had changed. Fear. For the first time in 300 years, queen of the empire, was afraid. "Commander," she said, her voice now serious, "these humans are not to be harmed. Put them in the guest quarters. Give them everything they need. I want our best scientists to study this one." She pointed at Ho. "I want to know how this is possible." Bode, "Yes, my queen." As the soldiers led the humans away, returned to her throne, she sat down heavily, like the weight of the galaxy had just landed on her shoulders. She had ruled for 300 years. She had seen species rise and fall. She had believed that they were the strongest beings in the galaxy. But now she had seen something that changed everything. A creature that refused to die. A species that could survive the impossible. And there were billions of them, on a planet called Earth. For the first time in her long life, Queen wondered if her empire had finally met something it could not defeat. The guest quarters were nicer than any prison the humans had expected. The rooms were large and clean, with soft beds and windows that looked out over the alien city. Food was brought 3 times a day, strange fruits and cooked meats that tasted surprisingly good. They were not locked in chains. They could move freely within their rooms. But they were still prisoners. Armed guards stood outside every door. Cameras watched their every move. And every day, scientists came to study them. Ho was their main interest. They could not understand how he was still alive. Every day, they ran new tests. They scanned his body with machines. They took samples of his blood. They measured his brain activity, his heart rate, his healing speed. And every day, they were more confused. "Your body should have shut down," one scientist told him through a translator. The scientist was female with softer features than the soldiers. Her name was Scientist Mora. "Among my people, when damage reaches a certain level, our brains release chemicals that stop the heart. It is a mercy. It prevents suffering." Ho lay on the examination table, his wound now properly cleaned and bandaged with medical technology. It was healing faster than anyone expected, though it would leave terrible scars. "We do not have that," he said simply. "Our bodies keep fighting until they cannot fight anymore." Mora shook her head in wonder. "This is not logical. Pain serves no purpose when death is certain. Why would your species evolve to feel such pain?" "Because sometimes death is not certain," Ho replied. "Sometimes if you keep fighting, you survive." This was the part they could not understand. They had evolved to accept death gracefully. Their bodies were designed to recognize when survival was impossible and to end things quickly and painlessly. It was, in their view, the most civilized way to die. But humans had evolved differently. On Earth, the creatures that survived were the ones that never gave up, the ones that kept running when predators chased them, the ones that kept breathing when everything hurt, the ones that refused to accept that death was certain. Lee spent hours explaining this to the scientists. She showed them images from Earth's history, soldiers who kept fighting with missing limbs, climbers who survived days trapped in snow, people who walked for miles on broken legs to find help. "Your species is insane," Mora said after one such session, but she did not say it as an insult. She said it with something like respect. Queen watched all of this through her many screens. She had cameras in the humans' rooms, in the examination rooms, everywhere. She watched Ho struggle to walk on legs that should not work. She watched care for her friend with a determination that seemed limitless. She watched Wu Jin sit quietly, planning something behind his calm eyes. She watched to study every piece of technology she could see, memorizing, learning. These creatures fascinated her, and they terrified her. On the 5th day of their captivity, she called to her private chamber. The room was smaller than the throne room but more personal. There were objects here, things that had collected over her 300 years of rule, art from conquered worlds, weapons from defeated enemies, and now, sitting across from her, a human. "Tell me about your planet," said. "Tell me about Earth." Was nervous but tried not to show it. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with your history. How did your species survive?" took a deep breath and began to talk. She spoke of ice ages that killed most life on the planet. She spoke of predators that hunted humans for food. She spoke of diseases that wiped out millions. She spoke of wars that killed even more. Listened without interrupting. When finished, the queen was quiet for a long time. "Your planet tried to kill you," she finally said. "Again and again, and each time you survived." "We had no choice," replied. "It was survive or die. We chose to survive." "But at what cost? You evolved to endure pain, to suffer, to fight against death even when death would be a relief. Is that not a curse?" "Thought about this carefully. Sometimes it feels like a curse," she admitted. "But it is also a gift, because we never stop trying. No matter how bad things get, there is always a human somewhere who refuses to give up, and that one person can change everything." Leaned back in her chair. Her dark eyes seemed to look through into some distant place. "The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years," she said softly. "We have conquered 100 species. We have built an empire that spans a quarter of the galaxy, and in all that time I have never been afraid." She paused. "I am afraid now." While spoke with, the other humans were busy. They had been studying the technology since they arrived. She noticed patterns, weaknesses. The power grid that ran through the building had a central point. If that point was disrupted, everything would go dark for at least 30 seconds. 30 seconds was enough time to run. She shared her findings with Wu Jin in whispered conversations when the cameras could not see their lips. The captain nodded slowly. A plan began to form. Ho wanted to be part of it. He was healing faster than anyone expected, but he was still weak. His wound was closed now, held together by medical technology, but moving too fast made him bleed again. "You cannot fight in your condition," told him when she returned from her meeting with the queen. "You will kill yourself." "Maybe," Ho admitted. "But if we do not try to escape, we die anyway. Or worse, we become prisoners forever. I would rather die fighting than live in a cage." Wanted to argue, but she knew that look in his eyes. She had seen it before, on battlefields and in hospital rooms. It was the look of someone who had already made their choice. "Fine," she said, "but I am coming with you, and if you start dying again, I will be very angry." Ho smiled. It was the first real smile he had shown since the attack. Deal. Over the next 2 days, they finalized their plan. They would cause the power disruption during a medical examination, when the security would be slightly lower. Wu Jin would take out the guards. Ho would provide backup despite his injuries, would reach the communication array and send a signal to Earth. It was a dangerous plan. Many things could go wrong. They might all die trying. But they were human. They did not know how to give up. On the morning of the 7th day, they were ready. Ho stood by the window of his room, looking out at the alien city. His body ached. His wound throbbed with every heartbeat, but his eyes were clear and his heart was determined. Today they would fight for their freedom. Today they would show what humans could really do. He touched the scar on his chest, the place where his body had been torn open, the wound that should have killed him. "Not today," he whispered to himself. "Not today." Somewhere in the building, a power generator began to hum. It was in position. The plan was starting. It was time to run. The lights went out. For exactly 2 seconds, the entire building was dark. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a red glow. Alarms began to scream. Soldiers shouted in confusion. That was all the time Wu Jin needed. He moved before the guards outside his door could react. His hand found the first one's throat, squeezing the spot where necks were weak. The guard dropped without a sound. The second guard turned, but Wu Jin was already there, driving his elbow into the alien's face. 2 guards down in 3 seconds. He grabbed their weapons and ran. In the medical room, Ho was already moving. The scientists screamed as he pushed past them. ignoring the pain that exploded through his body with every step. Da was behind him, her hands still sparking from the device she had used to short out the power. "This way," she shouted, pointing to a corridor on the left. "The communication array is 3 floors up." They ran, Ho's chest burned. He could feel his wound pulling, threatening to open again. But he did not stop, he could not stop. Joined them at the intersection of 2 hallways. She was carrying a medical bag she had stolen from the examination room. Inside were tools, bandages, and a small knife she had hidden for exactly this moment. "Wu Jin?" she asked as they ran. Here, the captain appeared from a side door, 2 alien rifles in his hands. He tossed one to Ho. "They are coming. We have maybe 2 minutes before they lock down the whole building." They ran faster. They were fast to respond. Within a minute, soldiers were everywhere. The red lights made the corridors look like something from a nightmare. Shadows moved, weapons fired, bright beams of energy cut through the air. Wu Jin shot 2 soldiers who blocked their path. They used a stolen to open locked doors, guided them toward the communication array, following maps she had memorized during her conversations with the Queen. They reached a stairway and began to climb. 1 floor, 2 floors. On the 3rd floor, they burst through a door and found themselves in a wide room filled with strange machines. There, pointed at a large console in the center, "That is the main transmitter. I can send a signal from there." "Do it," Wu Jin ordered. "We will guard the door." Ran to the console while the others took positions. Ho leaned against a wall, his breathing heavy. Blood was starting to seep through his bandages again, but he held his rifle steady, pointed at the door. Outside, footsteps approached, many footsteps. The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured through, firing as they came. Wu Jin and Da returned fire. Alien bodies fell, but more kept coming. There were too many. Ho moved forward, placing himself between the soldiers, and he fired again and again, each shot finding a target. His body screamed in pain, his vision blurred, but he did not stop. A soldier got close enough to swing at him. Ho blocked with his rifle, then drove the butt of the weapon into the soldier's stomach. The alien doubled over. Ho finished him with a shot to the back. But the effort cost him. He stumbled, nearly falling. Fresh blood poured from his wound, staining his shirt dark red. "Almost there," shouted from the console. "Just a few more seconds." More soldiers came. It seemed endless. For everyone they killed, 2 more appeared. Da took a hit to her shoulder and fell back with a cry. Wu Jin pulled her behind cover, still firing with one hand. And then the soldiers stopped coming. They pulled back, making room in the doorway. Commander walked through. He was not wearing his ceremonial armor this time. He was dressed for battle, in black and gold that fit his body like a second skin. In his hand was a blade that glowed with blue energy. His black eyes found Ho and stayed there. "I knew you would try to escape," said. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Your species does not know how to accept defeat." Ho raised his rifle but was faster. He moved like water, flowing around the shot and closing the distance in an instant. His hand caught Ho's rifle and tore it away. His other hand struck Ho in the chest, right where the wound was. Ho fell. Pain unlike anything he had felt before exploded through him. He could not breathe. He could not think. He could only feel agony. Stood over him. "Stay down, this fight is over. Accept your death with dignity." Ho looked up at him with blood on his lips. Then slowly, painfully, he began to rise. His eyes went wide. Ho's legs shook. His arms trembled. Blood ran down his body in rivers, but he stood. He stood and looked in the eyes. "I do not know how to stay down," Ho said. His voice was weak but steady. "It is not in my nature." He swung at with his bare fist. The commander dodged easily, but the attack threw him off balance for just a moment. Ho used that moment to grab H's blade arm. He pulled, twisted, and suddenly they were both on the ground, fighting for control of the weapon. They rolled across the floor, punching and kicking, was stronger, faster, and uninjured. But Ho had something did not understand. He had the stubbornness of a species that had crawled out of caves and conquered its world through pure refusal to die. Every time hit him, he hit back. Every time knocked him down, he got up again. The fight went on and on, far longer than it should have. Finally pinned him to the ground, the blade at his throat. Both of them were breathing hard. His perfect face was bruised. His armor was scratched, and he looked at Ho with an expression that might have been respect. "Why will you not die?" asked. He sounded genuinely confused. Ho smiled. Blood covered his teeth. "Because my people are counting on me." Behind them shouted in victory. "Done, the signal is sent. Earth knows where we are." Turned his head for just a moment. It was enough. Ho drove his knee upward, catching in the stomach. The commander gasped and rolled away. Ho tried to rise again, but this time his body would not obey. He collapsed onto the floor, finally unable to move. More soldiers rushed into the room. They grabbed Wu Jin Da and they surrounded Ho's fallen body. The escape attempt was over. But it was not a complete failure. The signal had been sent. Earth knew they were alive. Earth knew where to find them. Help was coming. Queen arrived minutes later. She walked through the chaos of battle, stepping over fallen soldiers until she reached the humans. Her guards had them on their knees, hands bound behind their backs. She looked at each of them in turn. At Wu Jin, who stared back without fear. At Da, holding her wounded shoulder but still defiant. At who looked at Ho with desperate concern. And at Ho himself, unconscious on the ground, surrounded by his own blood, having fought until his body literally could not move anymore. "I have lived 300 years, said softly. "I have seen 100 species try to resist us. None of them ever fought like this." She knelt beside Ho's body. Her hand touched his face almost gently. "What are you?" she whispered. "What kind of creature refuses to die no matter what?" She stood and faced her soldiers. Her expression had changed. There was still anger there, but also something else, something new. "Take them to the secure chambers," she ordered. "Treat their wounds, keep them comfortable." Limped forward. "My queen, they tried to escape. They killed 20 of our soldiers. They should be executed." Shook her head slowly. "No, these creatures are too valuable to destroy. They have shown me something today." She looked at Ho's unconscious form one more time. "They have shown me what the Empire has forgotten. The will to fight, the refusal to surrender." She paused. "We are going to need that. We are going to need them." Stared at her in confusion. "I do not understand." "You will," said. "Soon everyone will understand." She turned and walked away, leaving her soldiers to clean up the mess. Her mind was racing, forming new plans, seeing new possibilities. The humans had tried to escape. They had failed. But in failing, they had proven something far more important. They were exactly what the Queen needed. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful beings in the Empire, generals who had conquered worlds, admirals who commanded fleets of 1,000 ships, ministers who controlled the wealth of countless planets. They all sat around a massive circular table, watching the screens that floated in the air above them. The screens showed the fight between Ho and Commander, every punch, every fall, every time Ho got back up. Queen sat at the head of the table watching her advisors. Some looked disgusted, others looked afraid, a few looked fascinated, all of them looked confused. "This creature took wounds that would kill any in seconds," said when the recording ended. "He fought our best warrior while bleeding from injuries you can see clearly, and he kept fighting. He kept standing. He refused to accept defeat." One of the generals, an old male named Admiral, spoke up. "This is disturbing, my queen, but what is your point? These humans are primitives. They have only been traveling the stars for a few decades. We have done so for 10,000 years." "My point," replied coldly, "is that we are losing." The room went silent. Stood and pressed a button on the table. New images appeared on the screens. Maps of the galaxy. Red zones spreading across territory like a disease. The Dominion, she continued. For 200 years they have been pushing against our borders. For 200 years we have been falling back. Slowly, yes, but falling back. We have lost 37 systems in the last 50 years alone. Our soldiers fight bravely, Admiral protested. They die with honor. Yes, said, they die, that is the problem. She pointed at the frozen image of Ho on the screen. This human should have died a dozen times, but he did not. His body did not shut down. His brain did not release the death chemicals. He kept fighting until he physically could not move. She looked around the table at her advisors. When was the last time a soldier did that? When was the last time any of us refused to accept death? No one answered. We have become too civilized, said. We have evolved to accept death gracefully, and that evolution is killing us. The do not accept defeat. They keep fighting, keep pushing, keep attacking, and we keep dying with dignity while they take our worlds. Minister Tora, who controlled the Empire's economy, raised her hand. What do you suggest, my queen? We cannot change our biology. No, agreed, but we can learn from those who have different biology. She turned to face the screens again. I propose an alliance with Earth. The room exploded in protest. Voices shouted over each other. Some called the idea madness. Others called it an insult to the Empire's honor. Admiral actually stood up, his face dark with anger. You would have us ally with primitives, with creatures who cannot even control their own pain responses. This is beneath us. Sit down, said quietly. Remain standing. My queen, I must protest. I have served this empire for 150 years. I have never heard such. Sit down. There was something in his voice that made even the old admiral obey. He sank back into his chair, his eyes angry but his body submissive. Looked at each member of the council in turn. I am not asking for permission. I am informing you of my decision. The humans have already sent a signal to their fleet will come looking for them. When they arrive, I will offer them an alliance. And if they refuse, Commander asked. He had been standing silently in the corner, still bruised from his fight with Ho. They will not refuse, said, because I will explain to them what the alternative is. The humans were brought to the council chamber later that day. Ho was awake now, bandaged and weak but standing on his own feet, walked beside him, ready to catch him if he fell. Wujin and Da followed behind, their wounds also treated. They stood before the council table, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the empire. Captain Wujin's face showed nothing. He had been in situations like this before. He knew how to wait. Rose and walked around the table until she stood before the humans. Her black eyes studied each of them carefully. Your signal was received, she said. Your fleet is coming. They should arrive in this sector within 10 standard cycles, what you would call about 2 weeks. Wujin nodded slowly. I am glad to hear it. They are coming to rescue you, to fight us if necessary. Smiled, but it was not a warm expression. Let me explain why that would be a mistake. She waved her hand and the screens around the room changed. They showed images of another species. These aliens were different from the darker, more insect-like, with hard shells and many eyes. The Dominion explained. They control half the galaxy. They have been at war with the Empire for 2 centuries, and they are winning. She showed more images. Battles, destroyed worlds, burning cities. When they conquer a world, they do not take prisoners. They do not accept surrender. They kill every living thing and strip the planet of all resources. Then they move on to the next world. Felt a chill run down her spine. Why are you telling us this? Because your species is now on their radar, replied. When you sent your distress signal, you broadcast your location across half the sector. They will have heard it. They know humans exist. They know where Earth is. She paused. and they will come. Wu Jin's calm expression cracked for just a moment. How long? Years, perhaps. They have other targets first, but they will come eventually. And when they do, your species will face a choice. Surrender and die quickly, or fight and die slowly. De stepped forward, her eyes angry. So what? You want us to surrender to you instead, join your empire as servants? No, said, I want you to join us as allies. The room went silent. Continued. The empire is powerful, but we are losing this war because we have lost the will to fight. Our evolution has made us too accepting of death. But your species, she looked at Ho, your species does not know how to give up. You fight until your bodies break. You refuse to accept defeat. She turned to face all four humans. I am offering an alliance between equals, technology, resources, knowledge combined with human endurance, human stubbornness, human will. You captured us, Wu Jin said slowly. You studied us like animals. You let your soldiers hurt us. Why should we trust you? Because they will not offer you a choice, replied. They will exterminate your species without a second thought. I am offering survival. The humans exchanged glances. They had a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Wu Jin turned back to the queen. I cannot speak for Earth, he said. Only our government can agree to an alliance. I understand, nodded. When your fleet arrives, I will speak with them directly. Until then, you are no longer prisoners. You are guests. She gestured to Commander. The commander will show you to new quarters. You will have freedom to move through the palace. If you need anything, ask. As the humans were led away, Admiral approached the queen. You are making a mistake, he whispered. These creatures are dangerous. They should be destroyed, not embraced. Watched the humans disappear through the door. Her eyes lingered on Ho, on the way he walked despite his wounds, on the strength in his posture despite everything he had suffered. Yes, she agreed quietly. They are dangerous. That is precisely why we need them. She turned away from the admiral and walked back to her throne. The war was about to change. Everything was about to change. For 10,000 years, they had ruled through power and technology. Now they would learn to rule through something else, something they had forgotten long ago. They would learn to rule through sheer, stubborn refusal to lose. And the humans would teach them. The Earth fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 12 warships, led by the battleship Eternal Dawn, dropped out of faster-than-light travel and appeared in space. They came ready for war, weapons charged, shields up. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, watching the grow larger on his screens. He was 63 years old, a veteran of humanity's first interstellar conflicts, and he had never seen anything like the fleet. Hundreds of ships surrounded the planet. Each one was bigger than anything Earth had ever built. This was a civilization that had been conquering stars while humans were still learning to use fire. Sir, his communications officer said, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. It is from Captain Park Wu Jin. Felt relief wash through him. Put it through. Wu Jin's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but healthy. Behind him could see the other crew members of the Horizon's Edge, all alive, all standing. Admiral Wu Jin said, please hold your fire, we need to talk. The negotiations took 3 days. Admiral came to the planet's surface with a team of diplomats. They met with Queen in the council chamber. She showed them everything. The war with the losses they had suffered, the threat that was coming for Earth whether they wanted it or not. Was a practical man. He understood the situation immediately. Alone, Earth had no chance against with the as allies at least they had a fighting chance. We will need time, he told. This decision must be made by our full government, not just by me. You have one cycle, replied. They are attacking a colony near the Crimson Nebula. If we win, the alliance will be strong. If we lose, there may not be an alliance to discuss. The vote from Earth came the next day. It was not unanimous. Many people were against trusting aliens who had captured their soldiers, but the majority understood the reality. When faced with extinction or alliance, the choice was clear. Humanity said yes. And so, just 12 days after Ho had been torn open by alien claws, human and ships flew into battle together. The Crimson Nebula was named for its color, a cloud of gas and dust that glowed red against the black of space. Somewhere inside that cloud was a mining colony, and somewhere around that colony they were attacking. The Allied fleet arrived to find chaos. Ships swarmed around the colony like angry insects. They were darker than the ships, covered in sharp angles and spines that made them look organic, alive. Their weapons glowed purple as they tore into the colony's defenses. "All ships engage," his voice rang out through the fleet communications. The ships moved with perfect precision. Their technology advanced beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Energy beams cut through space, destroying ships by the dozen. The alien vessels exploded in bright flowers of flame. But they kept coming. For every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared from the nebula. They were endless, relentless. Admiral watched from the eternal dawn as his ships joined the battle. Human weapons were not as powerful as weapons, but they were still deadly. Missiles streaked through space. Rail guns fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The human ships danced between the larger vessels, smaller and faster, hitting targets the bigger ships could not reach. But it was not enough. The numbers were too great. "We need to land troops on the colony," said over the communication channel. "They have already breached the outer defenses. If we do not stop them on the ground, the colony is lost." Captain Wu Jin stepped forward on the bridge of the command ship. He had been given a position of honor for the battle. "Let me lead the ground assault. My team and I have fought the before." Looked at him. That was different. Those were mindless creatures on an empty planet. The soldiers on that colony are trained warriors. "Good," Wu Jin replied. "That means they might actually be a challenge." Smiled. "Very well. Commander will lead the soldiers. You will lead the human contingent. Work together." The landing was rough. Anti-air fire filled the sky as shuttles descended toward the colony. Several ships were hit and crashed in flames, but enough made it through. Ho stepped onto the colony's surface with a rifle in his hands. His wound was mostly healed now, thanks to medical technology, but his scars would never fully fade. The doctors had warned him not to fight. He had ignored them. Beside him carried her own weapon. She was a doctor, not a soldier, but she had learned to shoot during the escape attempt. More importantly, she was not willing to let Ho go into battle without her there to keep him alive. Then Wu Jin led other teams of human soldiers, volunteers from the Earth fleet who had chosen to fight on the ground. They were joined by squads of warriors, forming a mixed force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The fighting was brutal. The soldiers were terrifying up close. They stood over 2 meters tall, covered in black shells that deflected small weapons fire. Their many eyes glowed with a cold, alien intelligence. They moved in swarms, communicating with clicks and hisses that sounded like a nightmare language. But the humans did not run, they fought. Ho led a charge against a position that was blocking their path to the main control center. Soldiers hesitated. The position was too well defended. A frontal assault was suicide. Ho went anyway. He fired as he ran, his rifle spitting fire into the enemy line. Fell, but more rose to take their place. A shot caught him in the shoulder. He kept running. Another hit his leg. He stumbled but did not fall. He reached the enemy position and fought with his hands when his rifle ran empty. The soldiers watched in shock, then slowly they followed. Something awakened in them that day, something they had forgotten, the will to fight past the point of reason, the stubbornness to keep going when logic said to stop. They fought like humans. In another part of the battle, found herself separated from her team. A group of cornered her against a wall. She had 3 shots left in her weapon and 4 enemies in front of her. She thought about surrendering. The part of her, the civilized part, said to accept death with dignity. But she was not, she was human. She raised her weapon and fired 3 shots. 3 fell. The 4th charged at her, claws raised for the killing blow. Threw her empty rifle at its face and ran straight toward it. She ducked under its claws, pulled a knife from her belt, and drove it into the soft spot where this head met its body. The creature screamed and fell. Behind her, a group of soldiers stared with their black eyes wide open. She had taken 3 shots to her armor. She was bleeding from cuts on her arms and face. By every reasonable measure, she should have retreated, should have found cover. Instead, she had charged. "What are you looking at?" she snapped at the soldiers. "The fight is not over, move." They moved. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was finally over, the colony was saved. They had been pushed back, their assault broken. Wreckage of their ships floated in the nebula. Their soldiers lay dead on the colony streets. The cost was high. Many had fallen, many humans too, but they had won. Commander found Ho sitting against a wall, getting his wounds treated by. The commander was injured as well, his armor cracked, his purple blood staining the ground. He stood before Ho in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "I understand now," said. "Your species does not fight because you believe you will win. You fight because you refuse to lose. That is not something I knew was possible." Ho looked up at him with tired eyes. "It is the only way we know how to be." Nodded slowly. "Then we have much to learn from you." He turned and walked away, leaving Ho and alone in the aftermath of battle. Finished wrapping his wounds and sat down beside him. They were both exhausted, covered in blood and dirt, surrounded by the smell of smoke and death. But they were alive. "We did it," said softly. "We actually did it." Ho nodded. "This is just the beginning. We'll come back, bigger, stronger. This war is far from over." "I know," replied, "but at least now they know what they are fighting." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Above them, through the broken ceiling of the building, they could see the stars. The galaxy was changing. The alliance between Earth and them was no longer just words on a treaty. It was written in blood now, sealed in battle. And the humans were just getting started. The war lasted 3 more years. 3 years of battles across 100 star systems. 3 years of blood, fire, and death. 3 years of humans and fighting side by side against the Dominion. It was not easy. They were strong, numerous, and without mercy. They did not care about losses. They did not care about suffering. They only cared about conquest. But something had changed in the alliance, something they did not expect. They had learned to fight like humans. In battle after battle, soldiers showed a determination that had been missing for centuries. They stopped accepting death gracefully. They started raging against it. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their positions were overrun, they held anyway. When logic said to retreat, they charged forward. They called it the human variable. Scientists studied it. Philosophers debated it, but soldiers simply lived it. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Ho fought in 17 major battles during those 3 years. He was promoted twice, became a symbol of the alliance, a living example of what humans could survive. The scars on his chest became famous. Every knew the story of the human who should have died but refused. Stayed by his side through all of it. She healed the wounded, human and alike. She became known as the one who could bring soldiers back from the edge of death. Some believed she had magic. She told them it was just stubborn human medicine. Wu Jin rose to become one of the highest-ranking human officers in the Alliance fleet. His calm leadership and tactical genius earned him respect even among the ancient admirals. He never raised his voice. He never showed fear. He simply looked at problems until he found solutions. He became the leading expert on integrating human and technology. Ships began to appear that combined the best of both species, power systems with human weapons, speed with human durability. These hybrid vessels became the most feared ships in the fleet. And together they pushed the back. The final battle took place in the home system. A massive fleet, 300 human and ships, faced the last defenders of the Dominion. They fought with the desperation of a dying species. They knew what defeat meant. But they had already lost. When the commanders finally surrendered, they did not understand what had happened. They had been winning. For 2 centuries, they had been winning. How had everything changed in just 3 years? The answer was standing on the bridge of the command ship. 4 humans, their bodies from years of war, looking at the surrender with quiet satisfaction. Queen received the surrender personally. She stood in the throne room of the palace, the same room where she had first seen Ho's terrible wound. The leaders knelt before her, their many eyes dim with defeat. Your species almost destroyed us, told them. For 2 centuries, you took our worlds, killed our people, pushed us toward extinction, and now it is over. The lead looked up at her. Its voice was a harsh clicking sound translated by machines. How we were winning, what changed? Smiled, it was not a kind expression. We found allies who taught us something we had forgotten, the will to never give up. The celebrations lasted for weeks. Across space, across human space, people cheered. The war was over. The Dominion was broken. A new era of peace could begin. On the last day of the celebrations, Queen summoned Ho, Wu-Jin, and did her throne room. When they arrived, they found the chamber filled with the highest leaders of the empire, admirals, ministers, commanders, all standing in formal rows. Rose from her throne and walked down to stand before the 4 humans. In her hands was a small box made of crystal. 3 years ago, she said, you were prisoners in this room. You were wounded, weak, far from home. Most species would have begged for mercy, would have accepted whatever fate we gave them. She opened the box. Inside were 4 medallions made of something that looked like frozen starlight. They were beautiful beyond words. Instead, you escaped. You fought my best commander to a standstill. You sent a signal that brought your fleet here, smiled slightly. You annoyed me greatly. Quiet laughter rippled through the room. Even Commander, standing nearby, allowed himself a small smile. And then you saved us, continued. You taught us how to fight again, how to refuse defeat, how to be stubborn in the face of death. She lifted the first medallion. For this, I present you with the crest of eternity. It has been given only 17 times in 10,000 years of history. It is the highest honor our empire can bestow. She placed the medallion around Ho's neck first, then Des, then Wu Jin's. Each human stood straight and proud, feeling the weight of the honor. When she was done, stepped back and looked at them. Her black eyes were soft now, almost warm. When I first saw your wound, she said to Ho, I believed you were already dead. I could see your organs. I could see your broken bones. No could survive such damage. And yet you stood before me, bleeding and dying, and told me that humans do not die easy. She shook her head slowly, remembering. I did not understand. I thought you were simply primitive, too savage to know when to accept death, but I was wrong. She gestured to the window behind her throne. Through the glass, the stars were visible, millions of points of light representing worlds that were now safe because of what these 4 humans had started. The galaxy feared us because we were ruthless, said. They will fear humanity because you are relentless. You do not know when to stop. You do not know when to die. And that is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Ho looked at the Queen, at the scars that marked his body, at the friends who had stood beside him through everything. He thought about the cave creatures that had torn him open. He thought about the fight with Commander. He thought about the countless battles, the pain, the fear, the endless refusal to give up. He touched the scar on his chest, the one that had started everything. Then he bowed, slightly but respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty, but we are just getting started. Laughed, a real laugh this time, full of genuine warmth. That is what I am afraid of. The throne room erupted in applause, and humans together, celebrating a new future. 2 weeks later, visited Ho in a military hospital on Earth. He was there for final treatments on wounds that still had not fully healed. He would carry his scars forever, the doctors said. They were too deep to completely repair. Ho did not mind. The scars reminded him of what he had survived, what he could survive. Sat beside his bed and placed a book on his table. It was thick, bound in strange material he did not recognize. "What is this?" he asked. "A gift from Queen," replied. "Medical texts translated into Korean. They want to learn from us, our pain tolerance, our healing abilities, our stubbornness." She smiled. "They are calling it the human variable. They are trying to understand why we do not give up." Ho laughed, then winced as his wounds protested. "Did they find an answer?" Shook her head. "They think it is a mystery, something that cannot be explained by science." She paused. "I told them it is simple. We refuse to give up because the alternative is giving up, and that is not something we know how to do." Outside the window, the sky was filled with ships, human and working together to build stations, repair vessels, prepare for whatever came next. The alliance was young but strong. The future was uncertain but bright. Ho looked at the stars, at the ships, at the world he had helped save. "The galaxy underestimated us," he said quietly. "They saw primitive creatures who had just learned to travel between stars. They thought we would be easy to conquer." He touched his scars one more time. "They will not make that mistake again." Took his hand and squeezed it gently. She did not need to say anything. They both knew what was coming. More challenges, more battles, more scars. But they were human, they were stubborn, they were relentless. And they were just getting started. High above Earth, a ship drifted in orbit. On its hull, freshly painted in both symbols and human letters, was a message, a warning to any species that might think of attacking the Alliance. It said, "We do not die easy." The galaxy had been put on notice. Humanity had arrived.